What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 666, a spooky edition of the Pay-Per-Viewpoint and Hot Tags Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
We are going to be breaking down All Out 2024 with our predictions, since we didn't get a chance to do that earlier in this week. And we've got about maybe 7 or so hot tags to talk about too. So by all means, everybody strap yourselves in. We are going to be spanning a whole gamut here. And we always want to know what you have to say as we talk about these things. So drop your thoughts in the comment section below on YouTube, or if you are listening elsewhere, then hop on all the different other methods for you to chime in with your opinions, like the Discord server. You can tweet at us. You can post stuff on Facebook, the Facebook group, the Facebook page, whatever it might be. You can go to the pages on smarkoutmoment.com, or of course, again, as you always do, if you are on YouTube, then that's the easiest thing. If you are there, make sure you click on the thanks button. Make sure you click on the like button. Double check that you are subscribed. Ring that notification bell so that way you get those email alerts for when we go live for the post show immediately following AEW All Out tomorrow night. This tomorrow night, right? Not Sunday? Yeah. Pretty sure it's Saturday. Should be. At least that's what I got in my notes. So not that I'm totally wrong about that. And if you do want to help us out on the monetary side of things, the Patreon and the YouTube channel membership are exactly the same tiers, exactly the same functionality and all. It's just whichever one you prefer. I uploaded the most recent Darkcast if you want to check that out, where I was grading all the current WWE and AEW champions as like a back to school edition for that. And of course, if you also want to pick up merchandise, Redbubble and TeePublic is where you can pick that up for either that side of things on Smark Out Moment or Fanboys Anonymous or A Mango Tees. It all funnels back to the same source. So if you are less so interested in the Smark Out Moment stuff, but you think that some of my other stuff is funny or whatever, like the shirt that says, this shirt sucks, then, you can pick that stuff up and it'll all help grow a mango tree. So we do have hot tags to break down. We do have All Out. I think we should probably start off with the hot tags and kind of roll into the All Out stuff. That way we can get the TB talk and kind of merge into that discussion a little bit better. Plus we have some hot tags that are not like the craziest to break down as far as like, the most interesting topics that have ever existed, especially because we didn't even see 2 of the shows really. Actually, I didn't see 2 of the shows. I shouldn't say we, because you might have checked out Capital Collision. Did you check that out?
I didn't actually watch the show fully. I saw bits and pieces of it.
That's more than I've seen. So what we talked about last week, some predictions of that front. So for that and TNA Emergence, the TNA Emergence side of it, as far as I'm aware, nothing that stood out as particularly like a wow factor. I didn't see any real chatter about that. If you want the results of everything, here's a real quick rundown. Frankie Kazarian beat Kushida. PCO retained his titles over Shera, who I'm not even familiar with.
Mahabali Shera, but he now just goes by Shera. He was
sounds a little familiar.
He was the well, he obviously still is, but like previously, like he's been in TNA for a very long time. But he was the guy that used to do the little dance where he would tap his shoulders going to the ring, and now he's just a generic heel.
So it's like the big surprise that Matt Cardona had brought in. Zach Wentz had won the X Division title. That was the most interesting thing. And we already knew that by the time we got to the NXT pay-per-view that had gone down. So that kind of worked into there, but that didn't factor in whatsoever. It wasn't like that title was on the line, but he beat everybody in the Ultimate X match for that. So, maybe we see Wesley challenging for that on TNA in the future. Steve Macklin beat Eric Young. Jordan Grace and Spitfire beat Ash by Elegance and the Militia in a 6 knockout tag team match. You got Ace Austin and Chris Bay retained their tag titles. The System beat the group of babyfaces in the 8-man tag, which I think we all had said the babyfaces would win that, so that's kind of surprising. But then again,
because Joe Hendry was in it, and he was supposed to be and he was fighting for the NXT title the next night, or in 2 nights. So he thought, oh, they're not going to have them lose, but they did have them lose,
and they did. And Nick Nemeth retained the TNA World Title in a 60-minute Iron Man match over Josh Alexander with a 3-2 score. Not the most surprising thing either for at least somebody who's not watching this, but on the Capital Collision side of things, that's another breakdown of these matches. Stop me if you have anything to talk about, of course. Matt Vandegrift beat Alan Breeze in the Strong Survivor match. Empress Nexus Venus, not Venus, beat Trishadora and Viva Van by submission in a tag team match. Tomohiro Ishii and Hiroshi Tanahashi beat Grizzled Young Veterans and TMDK. They're now the number one contenders to the Strong Openweight Tag Team titles.
That match will also be happening at Royal Quest, which is the London show they have.
Big show that most likely you could assume Zack Sabre Jr. will defend the title. He's probably going to win right beforehand.
Well, I'm surprised either he will or he won't. Like, don't know at the moment.
I'm surprised that if that's happening there, that the Grizzled Young Veterans didn't win that.
I guess they might be having AEW commitments on that day because it's on a Sunday. So I guess they wouldn't be doing anything particularly that day, but maybe if they're doing a show in America the day beforehand, then I don't think they just want to travel to London and travel all the way back as well. So
yeah. Rocky Romero, Yoshihashi, and Kevin Knight beat Bullet Club War Dogs 6-man tag team match.
Yep, that'll lead to the junior heavyweight match as I expected.
Dirty Work, Tom Lawler, and Fred Rosser beat the West Coast Wrecking Crew. Zack Sabre Jr. beat Teton. That was not something that we had any debate about whatsoever. No. Same with Tetsuya Naito beating TJP. Obviously, that follows the rule that they didn't do with the Joe Hendry thing of like, you set these people up to look like they're the bigger stars. TMDK's Mikey Nichols and Shane Haste retained their tag titles for the Strong Openweight Tag Team Championship over Hechicero and Virus. Or is it Virus? Virus? Did we establish that? Probably Virus.
Yeah.
Hiromu Takahashi beat Mustafa Ali. So no thing about if Takahashi had lost, he would have to declare Ali as the best junior heavyweight. So I think you had mentioned that idea that they would probably go in that direction.
Yeah, and now they're 1-on-1, so they'll probably have some kind of rubber match down the line somewhere on some show.
Gabe Kidd beat Blackheart Leo Rush. They're really giving him the Blackheart nickname even on Wikipedia. That's interesting.
That's his nickname in New Japan. Obviously, he doesn't carry that name into AEW.
Yeah, it's just weird that that's even like what they tagged him on for Wikipedia. Like, instead of just like kind of like the tagging Seth freaking Rollins for things instead. And then Mercedes Moné retained the Strong Women's Championship over Momo Watanabe.
Yeah, from what I saw, like, looked like it was a pretty decent match. But it wasn't. I didn't like the fact that there was a lot of like shenanigans in it because Momo Watanabe is part of like the big heel group in Stardom, and they do a lot of they basically Stardom's equivalent of House of Torture. So they do a lot of like BS stuff and interference and weapons when the referee's back to turn and stuff like that. So it's basic heel stuff. And then Mercedes was actually working babyface in this match and got to tap out to the bank statement or whatever her equivalent of it's now called. Actually, she did. She hit the moneymaker. It was one of the better versions of the moneymaker that she hit as well.
She actually like did it well instead of looking ridiculous.
Yeah, it looked. To be fair, every time she's hit it on someone like a Stardom wrestler, it's looked pretty good. Literally, just anybody else that does I guess a Western wrestler, she can't really hit it on.
It's a recurring thing. We'll talk about that.
I don't think it's good. I think she should have a different finisher or just use, the equivalent of the bank statement.
Yeah.
Just do that because that was a good submission hold. Or she uses a frog splash and stuff like that. She's got other ways to beat people. I think she's just that finish is just too convoluted. So
let's switch over to. Actually, let's talk about this other TNA topic that we've got written down here. Two of them, actually. One person leaving the roster, one person joining the roster. Giselle Shaw is leaving. She requested her release. And Xia Li, or what she's going to go by through there. She's not going to go by Xia Li. That's the WWE trademark name.
It's going by Xia Zhao now.
Xia Zhao. She is going to be joining the roster. So one goes in, one leaves. I'm not super duper familiar with Giselle Shaw's work, but I liked Xia Li, and I think that that's cool that she's getting an opportunity to, join another roster and showcase her talents in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good that she's been doing stuff on the independent scene for a couple of months now. So it's good for her to sign up with a promotion which will allow her to be close to the top of the card if she does, just based on her reputation alone, and hopefully the ring work carries on into it as well. I mean, TNA does need to bolster up the Knockouts division, not only with the loss of Giselle Shaw, but also with the seemingly impending loss of Jordynne Grace as well. So you need to start bolstering things up. They also signed Heather Reckless recently as well, so another person that's made a bit of a name for herself on the independent scene. So yeah, it's good that they'll start to bolster those numbers, because they're in a bit of a lull period for that, where they'll need to start making new stars because they're about to lose their biggest star in that department.
I'm still just waiting for the day that Jordynne Grace flat out says, yeah, I'm not going to stick around and I'm just going to go to WWE, because it's inevitable. And in the meantime, when they have this talent exchange and stuff, we're going to see some crossover between some of the women in NXT popping over to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit, but they're not going to stick around for long.
Yeah, well, that happened this week as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, Ariana Grace is like the official liaison or something.
Yeah, and then you had Carmen Petrick come out to challenge Jordynne Grace to a match, and Jordynne Grace beat her, and then lights went out and Wendy Chu was there, so I guess Wendy Chu's the next one up for Jordynne Grace. Yeah,
which I'm disappointed in that in more than one way. I don't like when they have an open challenge and then they announce the person ahead of time. I want the open challenge to remain an open challenge, and then that can kind of be like a mystery angle heading into it, because now I'm like, all right, so it's Wendy Chu against Jordynne Grace. Obviously, Jordynne Grace was going to retain anyway, but now that I know that that's the game plan, I'm less interested in that angle for Tuesday night. That's a shame. But the partnership is fun, so yeah, I might end up putting something up on eWrestling News on my question of the day of something like, what would you do if you had the open challenge? Who would you have booked, or something like that? I'll probably think about that and brainstorm over the next few days. But yeah, that's something new on the TNA front. And then for the roster changes, we continue with some of those things. Here's a small thing on the AEW list, which is that they removed the win-loss records from the roster page, which is another step away from not only what we had gotten originally with AEW and the whole, this is more sports oriented and the numbers are going to matter and we've got the rankings and all. Eventually they get rid of the rankings, they bring the rankings back, they get rid of it again, but now they're just win-loss records are gone. So I wonder what prompted them to just abandon this at this point.
So they've been gone from the roster page. As far as I'm aware, after watching Dynamite on Wednesday, they're still appearing in people's
the lower third.
So they're not gone 100%, but I assume this is just the beginning of the end for them. Yeah, they've demonstrated throughout the course of, or at least in the last few years, that they just don't want to handle a ranking system, and they don't want to busy themselves with the particulars of deciding who gets title shots and do things in that way, which is, it's disappointing because it moves away from the concept of wins and losses matter, which is what you should be aiming for. You're now very much doing the same things in the way the WWE does them, which is, again, it's not like saying it's a knock on WWE. If they want to do that way, they're more than welcome to do so. It's a case of, if you are trying to distinguish yourself from the competition, one way of doing that is to make sure that people are aware that your wins and losses matter, and where your rankings are, or how often how your win-loss record looks, should determine what titles you're going for, what opportunities you get, if you need to rack up a few wins before you can get a title shot. Because, I mean, this week was as clear an example as you ever get, where you had the two people there were two title matches on the show, and the two people challenged for it were Cole Fletcher, who loses the majority of singles matches he has on AEW, and Nyla Rose, who I don't think has won a singles match in AEW for several months. She wins,
but she wins on Rampage.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like that really doesn't matter. That's like basically saying, wow, look at the win-loss records of, like, I don't know, Brutus Creed on WWE Main Event. Like, ultimately, who gives a shit? The same as what happened with AEW Dark when they were doing that. It was like, Jungle Boy Jack Perry has like 32 wins, and it's like, yeah, he beat nobodies on Dark.
Well, I say that I can understand those ones in terms of the case of you're just building up a decent sized win-loss record, so you can kind of keep him in the upper echelon while you're still having him lose to like the top level guys, and you're just building them up. But it's a case of now you don't have Dark or Elevation to help extend those records. Now you just have your 3 core shows, obviously your A, B, and C shows. But yeah, you can't just have people win meaningless matches and then get world title opportunities. I think the Nyla Rose thing is pretty much a meme at this point, that Nyla Rose is the first challenger for every new champion. So I think they just do that for the lulz. That's like a tradition, is like your first title defense has to be against Nyla Rose. The Cole Fletcher thing, they at least had the courtesy of having him beat Tomohiro Ishii on Collision. So he at least got 1 win before he challenged Okada, but it just feels a bit weird, especially when you have like several months ago, like Daniel Garcia cutting a load of promos saying that I need to earn a title opportunity. It's like, well, everyone else seems to be getting it, so what are you doing that other people aren't? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'd say I'm not a fan of the rankings and the win-loss records going away, but it is there's plenty of signs, and we've all kind of seen it, is that AEW is a sports entertainment company. They're just a sports entertainment company that does things slightly different than WWE.
Yeah, and that's a shame, because the kind of purpose at first was to be different. And, there's some things you got to be different because it's maybe the right decision. Some things you got to be different just for the sake of just doing something different. And sometimes you try something different, you realize, hey, the reason why a company like WWE, or any company for that matter, does that is because that is the way that works the best. But I liked the idea of at least the win-loss records being something that they put more prominent focal point on.
Yeah, it's the issue of, like, as I enjoy the vast majority of the stuff that AEW does, but it's a case of when your original motto was to like change the world, and it feels, especially in the last couple of years in particular, that the world changed them, in the fact that like they've seen what works in WWE and decided we have to be more like that. So they're letting themselves, like many companies before them have done, so they've allowed themselves to become accustomed to the norm of the industry leader, rather than continue to try and be a challenger brand. They decided the best way forward is to be more like them, which it doesn't work. So that's, I think they'll learn to. Well, I say they'll learn sooner or later, but they always try and make the step of, okay, we're going to do things like the Continental Classic, and we'll bring back the rankings at the start of this year, and we're going to make those adjustments to a more sports-based presentation, and then we'll just go back to type. But I think that's also because they've probably got a lot of ex-WWE writers and personnel behind the scenes now that probably are taking a lot of the stuff they learned from there and applying it into their presentation now.
Just being like, have you thought about XYZ?
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, I'd say, I can't say for certain because I know Tony Khan like has certain things that he likes and wants to push and be a big deal. That's that have a sports entertainment like aesthetic to them. I mean, look at Orange Cassidy and stuff like that. But I think that the more the booking seems to go away from him just being like 100% at the helm and what he says goes, and he's basically calling all the shots, the more it's kind of divided up into other people taking certain responsibilities. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Jen Pepperman is heading the women's division side of things, and got people like Will Washington and Jimmy Jacobs and Pat Buck and stuff like that behind the scenes doing stuff. The more that they get involved in it, the more it seems to just move away from what the original vision of, like I say, there's more voices in the room and they're kind of diluting the overall presentation. This is why sometimes watching an episode of Dynamite or Collision, it seems to just bounce around different styles and tones. So, but yeah, as I say, it doesn't disrupt the overall experience, but it is noticeable how much the tone can shift from one segment to the next.
Well, speaking about the tone shifting from one thing to the next, and another roster thing, Odyssey Jones, man, he originally, this hot tag started out as Odyssey Jones has been suspiciously taken off the roster page. And then it became, oh, he's probably released. And then it became, oh, he's gone because of domestic violence allegations that had been, I guess, popping up around July, and people weren't paying enough attention to it or whatever, or maybe they were and they just decided to not do anything about it and then give him his push or something. I don't know. But talk about a real fuck up of a situation. He gets a pretty solid quick run in NXT, moves up to the main roster faster than most people do, gets drafted to Monday Night Raw, does not show up for an entire year, gets drafted a second time still to Raw with a typo on his name, so that was like very strange. Months later, finally shows up. Meanwhile, all this time, I've been, putting in different articles here and there, like, what is going on with Odyssey Jones? Why is he not on TV or released? Because that was around the time that they had released like Von Wagner and Zion Quinn and all. And 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, whatever it is, he ends up being in this situation and he's gone. So there goes Big O, his whole push, his elements of that story with the New Day and Final Testament. That's out of the window now. I don't know if they're going to try to pivot into something else or if they're just going to be like, all right, that's the end of the story, and New Day and Final Testament to just do something else in the meantime until they figure something else out or whatever. But it's a shame in multiple different ways. One being, the guy seemed fun and entertaining, so I was looking forward to seeing what he could do. But even more so of a bad situation of him doing that, where it's like, well, now you deserve to get removed from this, because you don't mess around with domestic violence stuff, especially in this current environment. The company has more than enough reason to just be like, yeah, we don't want to associate with you, and you're gone. So it sucks for whoever he allegedly did something to, and it sucks for him to be in a stupid enough situation to be in that position for himself. And it sucks for the roster. It sucks for the New Day and Final Testament and all. Nothing good coming out of this at all. But goddamn, Odyssey Jones, how do you screw up like this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the perspective, because like from my perspective, it's like, oh, this is a good thing because Odyssey Jones is no longer on TV. So that to me feels like a net benefit for the wrestling fan.
You weren't digging anything you had seen?
No, because he's just another like big guy that was just, he could do some some decent stuff, but it's not like I don't feel like the roster feels any like weaker with Odyssey Jones gone. Just opens up a spot for someone else to come in potentially. Like, the best that Odyssey Jones probably could have hoped for is that he'd be one of the guys that gets eaten alive by Obafemi when he comes onto the main roster.
I mean, Obafemi, like, you've got Bronson Reed that they're building up. You got Omos that they're not doing anything with, except for he and Rey Mysterio popped up at this hot dog eating contest that happened on Labor Day. The Joey Chestnut and Takeru Kobayashi unfinished beef, which was a hilarious fucking subtitle. I love that. Anybody who's wondering about that, Joey Chestnut won. He broke his own record. I think he ate something like 73 hot dogs or something fucking crazy like that. But the Omos and Rey Mysterio were on there, and it's like, oh, that's Omos. He's on TV. It just happens to be on a hot dog eating contest, not WWE. But you have a couple people like that, and eventually Obafemi is going to come in, and he's just been kicking ass. So, all these people that have been groomed for that major, huge monster spot, he's the one that seems like he's going to work out better.
But yeah, as I say, I don't feel like there's like it's a big loss long term, especially because even though he's been technically on the main roster for like nearly 2 years, it's like we've only really seen him for the last month or so. So it's just like he's a guy that comes in, does some stuff with the New Day against the Final Testament, and then he's out there, and it doesn't. It's so conspicuous about how like certain things are presented, and it's actually like there's an equivalent that's going on in AEW just in a slightly different way right now, in that Odyssey Jones does all this stuff, and then again, I didn't watch this week of Raw, but what I've heard of it, like any segment that was involving the people that he was involved with beforehand, like there was no reference to him whatsoever. Like they didn't say didn't say the name Odyssey Jones. It's very similar, like how conspicuous the AEW is. Like ever since that Mercedes and Britt match, like nobody's ever even brought up Britt Baker at all. Like there's been no mention of her in any segment, or she's not been in a match, she's not been on TV or whatever. So I think I'm not saying that she's been released by any stretch of imagination, but I think it's a case of they're trying to sweep certain things under the rug before they bring her back into it. And in this case with Odyssey Jones, it looks like there's going to be no coming back from this.
I highly doubt that you're going to see any movement positively on his front whatsoever, because it's not something like some other people that have been removed in the past where there's no like controversy to it. They just decided, like as far as I'm aware, like nothing ever happened with Cameron Grimes, for instance, where it's just like we don't really want to pay for his contract anymore, or Dijak, another example, or Ricochet even. Like Ricochet decided to leave, so if WWE ever wanted to bring him back, they would just bring him back and it wouldn't be an issue. But like this kind of stuff, they're not going to take the risk. He wasn't in a position that they would feel like they need to bring him back, and they are missing something from the roster by bringing him in. And if he ends up somehow clearing these allegations and all, then maybe. But even then, they're going to be like, more wary of bringing him back. And it's not great when you hear these kind of things. But the benefit of it is somebody like an Obafemi will eventually have one less roadblock to get into. So, other roster related things, it seems like it's going to be a roster related thing at least, but this is on the AEW front. AEW trademarked The Clone and El Clone or El Clon. I'm assuming it's Clone. The Clone and The Clone. Who could potentially be the Clone? I don't know anybody that stands out that could be like repackaged like that, or anybody that's like on the up and up that they can maybe bring in and do that kind of gimmick.
I'm going to presume that it's going to be someone from, I think it's going to be someone like Hologram, who's come in like from the Mexican side of things, like from like one of those promotions, and has been hired like kind of an under the radar one because you're less, well, the typical fan is less familiar with those people, so it's a case of we don't need to be super aware of that point. It's just like bringing them into, and I imagine that they're going to feud with Hologram. I just think that's going to be the case. Like, it's just going to be Hologram versus the Clone.
Yeah,
and it's going to be like a weird version of the Sin Cara thing.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like, there's going to be like they're going to be a case of like it looks like it's hologram wrestling, but then the real hologram comes out and says, "Well, that's clearly not me wrestling," and then they'll take on the persona of the clone or El Clone, and then they'll eventually have a mask versus mask match, and they'll reveal who the guy in the mask is, and it'll be Blake Christian. or Fuego del Sol or something like that.
What if it's just Ric Flair? Black Scorpion thing or something.
But yeah, imagine Ric Flair trying to do everything the hologram does in the ring would be pretty.
I mean, I'd watch the shit out of that. Yeah. That would be more interested in watching that than some legitimate Ric Flair segment. That'd be great.
But that's where I'm going so far. I'd say it could be completely different. I think it's just conspicuous to me about why they've gone with the Spanish title for it as well. Just immediately leans me towards a Latin wrestler being the pick for this one.
I mean, that maybe a Chris Jericho, some of the things we've seen in the past, but yeah, it's not something that I would imagine El Clone is going to be a renaming for Action Andretti or something along those lines. But could be fun. I like when they go gimmicky and weird with different things, and I'm a product of the new generation era where that stuff can be even more interesting. Just the fake Diesel and fake Razor sucked, but it was still interesting. So we'll see how that pans out. Let's talk about this story here about AEW is going to be sued, or AEW, Tony Khan, and Ian Riccaboni are going to be sued, I should say, by the Tate twins and Kevin Kelly over the releases that had happened that revolved around, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but seemingly revolved around situations that I would think that they wouldn't have much of a case for, especially the Tate twins.
Yeah, I mean, based on I haven't read the whole lawsuit, but based on the little snippets that I've seen people put out online, it feels very sour grapes approach. First of all, I think this should be brought up again, and also we'll throw out the word allegedly here at this point in time, just to point the fact that we don't want to come after us as well. They'd probably fail based on what they've done so far, but we don't want to risk that. So I believe they're being represented by Jim Cornette's legal team, or the people that he would use to represent himself in these situations, which does, make sense if you're going with this kind of pretty petty, vindictive route. It feels like that's the what you would take. And yeah, a lot of the things there's been a lot of people that have pulled out sections of the lawsuit. I don't have any kind of to hand at the moment, but picking up some inconsistencies and in terms of dates and times and stuff like that. There's one point I think they mentioned that there were between 2012 and 2023 there were about 23 Ring of Honor shows that took place somewhere when it's actually 230. So it's they're making not so much making numbers up, but they are obviously just the person that's put it hasn't taken a lot of care and attention about it. Tate twin stuff, it's about them apparently being booked for certain places and then saying that they weren't going to show up for it, and then that was the rationale behind letting them go, and them contesting that point. Kevin Kelly, I think it's very much just push on the fact that he was let go from his contract due to fundamentally poor performances in commentary in Collision, where he was just completely outshined by Nigel McGuinness and Tony Schiavone to the point where they just decided, we'll just go with those two, and we don't really need you here anymore.
Superfluous extra monetary expense.
Yeah, I mean, one that I saw again is just shows a bit of the let's say the pay side of it, or I think one of the points they put on there is that Kevin Kelly wasn't allowed to call Sting's last match.
which like, okay, like who says like, that you need to be the one doing that?
Like, was that part of your contract when you signed it? It's like agreements like you will be the one to call Sting's last match. It's like, I'd be surprised if anyone. I imagine like Jim Ross might have that sort of thing in there, but he's Jim Ross, so he can put those sort of things in his contract if you want him to. But
and with that, ultimately, that's up to Sting too. Like if Sting was like, I want Kevin Kelly to do it, and they didn't let him, then that would be a different story. But I don't know. I kind of imagine that he probably wasn't requesting that.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I don't think Tony Khan was asked anything about the lawsuit at the press conference he did before All Out, which I think is, again, just another sign of the wrestling media not redoing their job properly. It extends to both AEW and WWE.
Yeah, totally.
But it's a case of, I imagine that this will be swept under the rug pretty quickly. I don't imagine, like, at the end of the day, Tony Khan has got limitless resources, pretty much, or the Khan family has pretty limitless resources. They can buy the best lawyers available, and they'll deal with this pretty quickly. I don't think, even if the case was a bit stronger and it feels like it's pretty flimsy to start with, I doubt that they'd be able to get anything out of it. I think one of the more interesting things as well is that, like, part of this lawsuit is also bringing up the idea of the fact that AEW wrestlers are incorrectly attributed as independent contractors rather than employees, which again is just a general wrestling thing. And that's like, on a whole, I agree with that sentiment in the same way that I agree with it for WWE and any other promotion that basically doesn't allow their wrestlers to be independent contractors in the sense that they would take bookings anywhere else. So it's slightly different with AEW because AEW does let a lot of their talent take bookings elsewhere. So in that case, they are a bit more independent. Obviously, WWE, it's definitely more lenient nowadays, but it's obviously for the
basically not true.
Yeah, for the vast majority of the roster, that's not the case. So it's a case of, oh yeah, in that sentiment, I agree with you. But the fact that, first of all, you're just throwing this in here now feels very convenient. I don't think that you cared about it when you first joined the company in the first place. And secondly, like, to go after like AEW for that, I'm not saying AEW, are in the same boat with WWE in that regard, but the fact that going after them for it feels like, okay, that's the weird one to out of the two major companies, that's the odd one to go for in that scheme of things. But as I say, it feels like a pretty frivolous lawsuit that won't stand the test of time.
I can't imagine that it will, and the likelihood that they have any kind of real foundation to stand on is pretty low. So, this will just be one of those things that we hear about a couple more times. It disappears. Maybe they end up deciding that it's better to just give them a little bit of money and telling them to just, kind of fuck off and leave it alone. Or maybe they decide, no, if you want to be really putting up the fight, then we're going to drag this out long enough or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I can see being upset in one way or another, but I don't think that they've got a leg to stand on. And we got two more hot tags essentially here. One of them being, it's not officially announced. They might even announce it tonight for all we know, but I don't think they're going to announce it quite yet. The report that WWE is going to have a primetime special on NBC in December that will seemingly be Saturday night's main event returning, which is funny in one way. It's, that's the term that they've been using for the Saturday house shows here and there, but who really cares? It's not like people are paying enough attention that that's going to matter. It's an NBC special, so you kind of would assume that it would be called Saturday night's main event just based off of tradition. But I would have been okay with them going in a different direction and kind of, putting a different pay-per-view name and repurposing there, like, I don't know, like Fully Loaded or something. But the fact that they don't have any main roster pay-per-views scheduled yet for December, at least none of them are announced, and that's been a regular thing lately, this can be kind of a mini pay-per-view. And We're going to see some other little mini pay-per-views coming around. Like this next coming week is essentially going to be like mini pay-per-view week for WWE. You're going to have that WWE week set up. You're going to have the premieres, like the CW premiere for NXT is going to be treated basically as a mini pay-per-view. And I'm assuming we're probably going to get Solo Sikoa versus Cody Rhodes next week on SmackDown. So maybe by the time we come around in December, they might have some kind of a game plan of like an interesting enough 1 or 2 matches, maybe 3 matches, depending on how much they want to do, or like some big promo segment that they want to do with The Rock or whatever. I could see that being their strategy for this, but it's going to be something we have to pay a little bit of attention to. And if they're going to go with a Saturday night NBC primetime special, you might as well go with the traditional name, right?
Yeah, I'd say that there's no need to break from tradition with that. So this is all kind of like quite tentative at the moment still, and they haven't announced any like date or anything on those lines. It's just that it's most likely going to be a Saturday night in December that will probably be called that. So I'm going to go for a random stab in the dark and say that it will take place on December the 28th. Reason for that being is that we already know WWE is hosting a live event on the same day as AEW World's End. Yeah. And what's a convenient surprise, they're also going to be having supposedly a Saturday NBC special on in December as well. Yeah, so it's a little bit of counter programming. Yeah, I think this is their equivalent of the Survivor Series Starrcade stuff from all those years ago. So yeah, I imagine that that's the way it's going to go. I don't think you need to be a genius to know what they're going to be doing here. We don't have Rob on here to say, oh, they may not be doing it like that. Then they obviously are doing it like that. So, to be fair, we don't know for sure, even though like it's pretty much going to be guaranteed that that's what I will totally hold my hands up and say that I was wrong if they decide to do it on the 14th or something like that. But I stand here feeling fairly confident that that's the route they're going to take. I can't imagine that if they do decide to do any counter programming, that they're going to counter program ROH Final Battle in comparison. No, I don't feel the need that they'd feel the need to do that. Yeah, but that's something that when we get confirmation about it, and eventually when the show happens, then we'll kind of take care of that business then. But it wouldn't shock me at all if we end up getting something with The Rock, and we end up getting. Maybe they end up being like, well, a Rock promo is already, that's, more important than matches. But we could see something like the way that they did the WWE Day One thing. This time around, it was The Rock coming out and doing that promo. And they effectively treated that as like a special episode of Monday Night Raw in a different type of way. So maybe that's when, for all we know, that's when maybe The Rock fights Cody Rhodes, and maybe they even do a title change there or something like that. But the current setup for that they haven't fully announced yet, so we'll find out more information in the future. And let's bounce back around to the TV talk of anything that we need to kind of run down before we head into the AEW All Out predictions. But the Monday Night Raw, NXT, etc. side of things, a week that, in the grand scheme, of course, there's always things that we could talk about here and there. But the big things, in my perspective at least, on Monday Night Raw, we have our Fatal 4-Way now determined. Ilya Dragunov had beaten Dragon Lee and Dominic Mysterio. Braun Strowman filled in for Bronson Reed, who had contracted COVID. So he ends up winning the match of Sheamus, Ludwig Kaiser, and himself. I don't know if that means that they were planning on having Bronson Reed in that Fatal 4-Way, or if there was another plan and they decided to just pivot. But I got to assume if Strowman's there in that spot, that Reed was probably going to do that. And instead of Strowman coming out and screwing over Bronson Reed in that 4-Way that's going to happen on Monday,
they probably are just switching it up a little bit, and it's going to be Reed coming out, attacking Strowman, and then, you know, kind of doing that thing. I didn't think either of them really stood much of a chance to win and fight Bron Breakker to begin with, because it seems like it's very much built around Jey Uso. But nothing else on Raw that really is like the most noteworthy talking points from my point of view. NXT, we had the Rascals won the opportunity to fight for the NXT tag team titles going forward. We got a bunch of matches set up for the next little bit of stretch of time for NXT that's going to lead into, like, they're not doing Halloween Havoc stuff quite yet, but they're focused on next week and the CW premiere. So that's going to kind of like ding a little bit of the Halloween Havoc potential, I think, because they're going to have too many other things in the meantime. But they're continuing some feuds. They're ending some feuds. Lyra Valkyria popped up. She is back in a tag team-ish situation with Tatum Paxley. So even though they didn't announce it, it seems like it's probably going to be Tatum Paxley and Lyra Valkyria against Rosemary and Wendy Chu coming up soon. But Wendy Chu seemingly is going to be the one that fights Jordynne Grace in an open challenge for the TNA Knockouts World Championship. And that is set up for this next week. So I don't know if they're going to just wait a little bit for that or what. But we do have Duke Hudson against Ridge Holland. Obuff Hemi's continuing his thing with the D'Angelo family. He beat Stax. Seems like Jada Parker might be turning babyface. I don't know if I really love that idea, but sure. And Pete Dunne and Trick Williams went to a double count out, so there is going to be a last man standing match next week. That is going to determine who fights Ethan Page as the next number one contender for the NXT Championship. So that side of things, I mean, there's some interesting stuff happening in NXT, but not the craziest things again. Any of that Raw or NXT stuff stand out to you, or any other kind of topics you want to talk about that I'd mention?
There's nothing like particularly. I mean, the Tatum Paxley and Lyra Valkyria thing seems a bit weird because, as far as I'm aware, again, Simon doesn't watch. They haven't really done anything to establish that they were on good terms again.
I don't think anything's really changed your mind.
No, and then yeah, the Pete Dunne and I just feel a bit weird about like Pete Dunne's lot in life, really, because he just now is just back in NXT doing stuff. Like, he's been in WWE for 10 years, right? At this point,
has it been 10 years?
Oh
my god,
like
it might be. The NXT UK brand came and went.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think because I think I heard, I read something or read a tweet or something like that with someone referencing about Pete Dunne's, like how long he's been on the main roster, and I can't remember. They might end up some kind of like good analogy or something, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it just feels like he can't get to another level. That he's just always going to have the ceiling that he keeps bumping into. I just think it's
not quite 10 years. It's on the, or no, yeah, December 2016 is when he joined with the whole UK tournament. Okay, so we're getting close to 10 years.
Yeah, it just, yeah, maybe it just feels maybe a bit slightly longer than that, but yeah, it just feels like he's just always been in the same kind of, well, first of all, the NXT UK, because he's trying to help launch that brand, but then just basically goes to NXT, then comes up to the main roster for a little bit, straight back down to NXT, then up to the main roster for a little bit, then back to NXT. It just feels like he's never gonna go beyond that point as long as he's in WWE. So
yeah, I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith that he's on his way towards a world title reign anytime soon. And
that's not me saying like, oh, you should go to AEW or anything like that. Like, at the end of the day, I think AEW's roster is loaded as well, so I don't think that he would necessarily have like a major step up. Although he probably would just be part of the Blackpool Combat Club, which would be fine. But yeah, I would like to see him do something different every now and again, or at least get one push up the card every now and again.
At least they're taking that Butch name and they're ragging on that now.
Oh yeah, that's always good that they take the opportunity to say, hey, remember the old guy doing the stuff? He was dumb.
Mm-hmm. We're not going to do that anymore, you know?
Yeah.
So that brings us into...
Oh, sorry. There's one other thing that I saw a clip of, because it was one of the big things that was shared about online, at least from the stuff that I was seeing and the people that I follow. Julia coming out and in air quotes, kneeing Chelsea Green.
Not the best one strike debut, no.
No. So hopefully she hits people a little bit stiffer next time, just to no, I know that a lot of these knees, obviously you're not actually kneeing people in the face, and it's a case of there's always camera angles involved with it, so maybe the camera angle was really bad for this one as well. But it's just a case of, yeah, it just looked really bad. So hopefully they tighten things up, whether it's on her end or from the camera side of things moving forward.
Maybe she was a little bit too nervous that she was too stiff, and then she overcompensated and didn't land whatsoever.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, but
yeah.
But you know, Chelsea Green's has taken some of the most horrendous bumps in recent memory, for especially on the women's side of WWE. So I doubt she would have been too upset about taking a knee in the shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, Julia had a very quick promo with Roxanne, just being, I think she said, Yumi CW, and that was it. Basically, that's all she needed to say anyway. It was just the, oh my god, sorry about the sirens, everybody. This is just going off. I could see my my sound bar jumping up like crazy. The game plan was pretty clear that it was going to be that anyway, and you don't need to do some crazy long promo to set up something that they have been building up for quite a while. So that's actually something maybe we should talk about the Fantasy League real quick.
Oh yeah, so based on the Fantasy League, so it was the following Bash in Berlin, Tony won yet another predictions contest, which basically is fourth so far of the year, which hasn't done anything to actually improve the fact that he just people that don't get any points. So, but that has helped a big change for Rob as well. So if Rob's listening to this before I get a chance to tell him what's happened, then he might be in for a bit of a shock. So as part of the upon winning your fourth prediction contest, the special reward you get for that is you get to decide which person is eliminated from one of your opponent's teams. And Tony decided, probably quite smartly, to eliminate CM Punk from Rob's team, and then immediately traded him onto his own team. So CM Punk is now part of Tony's team, as is Julia, who he traded for somebody. Again, it's hard to remember all the Ilya Dragunov. You got rid of that, and you also got rid of Sami Zayn, trading him for CM Punk, and the person that you eliminated from your team was Tula Tonga.
Which I should have gotten rid of a long time ago, but yeah. I didn't realize that I was actually getting negative points for it. I thought I was just getting 0. So if I would have paid a little more attention to that, I would have gotten rid of him a long time ago. Yeah. Not that it would have made, the biggest amount of difference in the world. It would be 30 points difference or something.
And then I responded, I'm yet to win a prediction contest, so I haven't been able to do anything other than just my one elimination, which I made Lara Valkyria this time around, and my one trade, which I brought in Sami Zayn, that Tony decided to drop for Austin Theory. And so all we need to do from this point that we haven't quite gotten around to yet is I'll need to catch up with Bob to find out which 1 or 2 trades he wants to make on his team for people that are available. If he does so, because Tony's already decided that CM Punk's gone from his team. Just so we add a bit of anticipation as well, the next time Tony wins a prediction contest, he'll be able to decide both mine and Rob's elimination.
If I win enough of these and I'm still so far behind, can we just change the rule to be like I just get a bump in my points or something?
So you just, because you win the predictions contest, you win the Fantasy League. Yeah, I don't know if that's if that's the way it kind of works.
I mean, if I win the next 3 of them in a row or something, it's gonna be all right, this is a little disproportionate. I keep winning that, and then I keep picking the wrong people to do the points. Yeah.
Well, I'd say now
handicap me,
Well, we've eliminated 6 people from our teams now, so our teams are getting a lot shorter. We've started off with 20 people, we're now down to 14, so every person is now more and more precious in terms of their points getting ability. So yeah, that's the position we are in right now. So you can head on over to www.fantasyleague.com or find it through the Smark website to see how our teams are doing and see who's picking up points over the course of the next period as we head up to Bad Blood, which will be the next stopping point with another prediction cost and another person being dropped from each other's teams and trades being made. So stick around for that.
So Julia better win that title on that show and not be like some kind of she wins by DQ and they drag it out type of a thing or something. Yeah, so that's Fantasy League. That's actually one of the plugs out of the way too while we're at it. So let's get into the Dynamite situation and the setup for tonight's Collision and Rampage and tomorrow's pay-per-view. AEW All Out is, of course, happening tomorrow night, probably starting around like 6 o'clock or so with the pre-show and dragging out until, midnight or so. But we have a couple matches that are set. We have a couple matches that are still lingering, and I'm sure that they're going to announce some more. But on Dynamite, they needed to get a few things out of the way first. Kazuchika Okada retained the AEW Continental Championship over Kyle Fletcher, and they established then that there will be a 4-way for the Continental Championship. Kazuchika Okada is going to go up against 3 people that are going to be determined on tonight's Collision episode, which will be match number 1 is Orange Cassidy and Bryan Keith. Storyline there being something that dates back 4 years ago with the Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho feud, where Orange Cassidy dropped a bunch of orange juice and ruined Chris Jericho's jacket. Yes, that's part of the story. That's, in typical fashion. We've got like WWE's got a storyline where people are really feuding over a bracelet, and now we're back to people feuding over a jacket. Accessories, they're very important. Look at the belts. But the Orange Cassidy and Bryan Keith match, I am assuming that just is going to be Orange Cassidy. What do you think?
Well, yeah, it'll obviously be Orange Cassidy. The whole storyline of that one, beyond being entered into the Continental Championship match, should I say, is that Orange Cassidy said that he'll pay back the money that Jericho lost on the jacket if Bryan Keith's able to beat him.
$7,000, I think he said.
Yeah, and he said it as if Jericho wasn't even there.
I like that. Yeah, you tell Chris Jericho that.
It was a funny segment, but yeah, Orange Cassidy's gonna win that one.
And there's also Lance Archer against Mark Briscoe. That's very obviously should be Mark Briscoe.
Yeah, I'd say so. But if you have Lance Archer beat Briscoe, then even though he probably won't win the match at All Out, it means that, there's a Ring of Honor World title match. You can build off the back of that. So there are options.
And he has an established name. He is a big guy. So, you put him in the match and you have him toss a couple of people around, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I would prefer Mark Briscoe.
Yeah.
Just for the quality of the match itself.
And then the Beast Morto, speaking of other big guys, against Konosuke Takeshita. So
I'm so looking forward to that match. That's just, yep, I might look forward to that match more than
some of the things on All Out.
Yeah, half the matches on All Out. It's just, the Beast, he's currently like leading the way for me in Beast Mortis for like underrated or underrated wrestler of the year for me. For AEW, he's just the perfect base for so much stuff. And he does a lot of cool stuff on Ring of Honor, and he's been involved in a lot of like great trios matches so far in AEW. It's just like he's never going to get pushed to a significant level, but he's a great guy to have on the roster. And
I haven't seen enough of him in AEW because they keep putting him on Collision and Rampage, and I typically don't watch them. But I liked what I had seen from Black Taurus before, so I kind of can't imagine that Beast Taurus was any different. It's the same guy's name change.
Yeah.
So against Takeshita is definitely a match that I'm gonna. If I don't get an opportunity to watch it tonight, I'm gonna try to watch that at some point tomorrow, or whenever I get an opportunity.
But obviously Takeshita win that because of the angle coming off of Okada beating Fletcher was Takeshita coming out to save his stablemate and then to stare down Okada. So that feels like the long term to me. I think that I personally, obviously we can talk about the match now in terms of our predictions for it, but I'm not a big fan of a 4-way match for the Continental Championship. I think that, again, it's about the differentiation of the belts in terms of like mid-card and sort of establishing like what's important with it. And the thing about the Continental Classic is that it did set parameters for these matches in terms of like no seconds at ringside, obviously no disqualifications, no countouts, well not no counts, but like obviously having those things
very
enacted.
Relaxed.
Yeah, but having those things like enacted, and like, so it was quite strict in terms of, okay, it's 1-on-1 and they're kind of like straight wrestling matches, obviously not like pure rules or anything along those lines for Ring of Honor, but so like they're very not restrictive but very fixed in terms of what you can and can't do. Whereas now you put in a 4-way, okay, that means the disqualification, the countouts are out the window. So it feels like it's going against the spirit of what the Continental Classic was. I feel like if it was up to me, and I was trying to institute some sort of like consistency and differentiation with this stuff, I'd have the Continental Championship just be, it strictly has to be 1-on-1 matches, no seconds at ringside, all of that stuff. But they decided to go a 4-way, but I feel like the reason they're doing that is so you get the taste of Okada and Takeshita in a match together before they have an inevitable 1-on-1 match down the line.
I could see that being the case.
Because I presume that obviously you're not going to have Okada's first loss being just a 4-way match. So I think that he's there to pin either Orange Cassidy or Mark Briscoe. And Takeshita, I think Takeshita would be one of the front runners in the actual Continental Classic when they decide to start putting that back up, because that's off around about October, November time like it did last year, so we're not too far away from that. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that, and then the actual Continental Championship match would be one of those matches in Japan.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah.
So there's multiple ways, because they ended it at World's End last year, but they could, if it's Okada, let's say Okada wins his block and then Takeshita wins his block, it makes sense to do that at Dynasty instead.
That's if they don't get to it beforehand, obviously, because we do have many months before that. But they,
absolutely. But
like you said, like they could be doing this as just like a little bit of a teaser, whet the appetite, kind of. And the lot of other things on Dynamite. Some of the stuff is not factored into the pay-per-view quite yet, but they could be doing something with that. Like Jon Moxley comes out, he talks about Darby Allin and puts him over, and I was assuming when I'm watching it that he is going to do some kind of a challenge, or something like kind of like what we had talked about before, about the idea that like maybe he's going to challenge Darby Allin and say, if you put your title shot for Grand Slam on the line, then we could do something. But no, he just keeps it vague. So that storyline is kind of just, rolling along a little bit here and there. I think we'll find out the direction at Grand Slam. I think we'll have the Darby Allin versus, well, whoever's the world champion at that point in time. Even though we all know who that will be, but just saying that for before we get the prediction. But yeah, I think that then once that match is over, that will be when Moxley makes his presence felt. I don't think it'll be him Darby Allin putting his title shot on the line. I think he'll have the title match, and then we'll find out what Moxley has in store for him. And there was a little bit of a tease that Roderick Strong and Hook could be having an FTW title match, but they didn't confirm that either. We know that there are things that they're kind of like lingering on when it comes to stuff like Jamie Hayter and Saraya. They haven't pulled the trigger on that yet. Going through the rest of this thing here, we have the Mariah May beating Nyla Rose, which we talked about. So that's, Mariah May is not going to be on the card. Yeah, it's kind of one of the things that's been happening lately where they've been prioritizing Mercedes Moné, and it's giving me that kind of vibe that like, yeah, that TBS title is more important right now than the women's world title.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But like, it's like I don't really mind that too much. Obviously the world title should be the most important. Absolutely, that should be the case. But I feel like we are in a good period in terms of the whole women's division in AEW is getting a lot of prominence and getting featured a lot more heavily than they used to. I mean, last night's Dynamite had 2 women's matches on it. which we haven't often seen for a long time. Like I know one of them was just Jamie Hayter squashing Robin Renegade, but had like 2 matches, and then you had Mercedes Moné and Hikaru Shida segment. You had Deonna Purrazzo video package. So it's like
I wasn't a big fan of that. What did you think?
What, the Deonna Purrazzo thing?
Yeah, I thought it was a little cringy.
Oh, but she's been doing that for a while, so I'm pretty used to it. Like that, she's done like about half a dozen of those segments now. So
not my favorite. I think it's a little like.
Well, we know. Well, yeah, I can understand that, but we know that she's just having the match on Collision with Hikaru Shida to give Shida another win before she faces Mercedes. So.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Which, I mean, we might as well say it. It's Mercedes Moné against Hikaru Shida at All Out, and I'm 1,000% Mercedes Moné is retaining, even if Kamille's not going to be there, technically speaking.
I would say I feel fairly confident that Mercedes is going to retain. I think that the match should be pretty good because their first match was good, and so hopefully they'll build off the back of that. I think Mercedes does need to bounce back with a better just match than the one she had with Britt Baker, based on what I saw of the match with Watanabe. Again, it just points to me that Britt was the one that probably fucked a lot of that up in the All-In match. So hopefully they replicate and then build upon what they did about a month or so ago on Dynamite. And yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty good match. And I wouldn't be 100% surprised if Hikaru Shida won, because there is a thing about Shida in terms of like being the ace of the division, the way that she's being monikered that now. Like, if she was to win this, she'd be the first woman to hold both the AEW Women's World Championship and the TBS Championship. So there is that side of things. Giving Mercedes a defeat and making her kind of, especially with Kamille banned at ringside, that can add a bit of fuel to her, like potentially just going straight back for it and winning the title back. Because I believe that like if Mercedes was to lose the title here, she would have won it back by Full Gear at the latest. But so yeah, I'm not. It's not like a 100% Mercedes Moné is going to retain. Obviously, if you feel that way, then I'd say it's more than likely that'll be the case. But I'm kind of like a 90-10. Like, I think Shida has a shot, not a big one, but a shot.
I'm like, if I were gonna bet on like the matches on this card, that would be one that I would be like putting a lot of money down that Mercedes is going to retain.
It's not the one that I would put the house on out of the matches that we got listed.
If I had the like rank them, it wouldn't be the number one, but it'd be pretty up there.
Yeah, it's higher than other ones. Yeah.
The stuff with the Elite Young Bucks and all that. We know now that Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta are going to challenge for the tag team titles at All Out. They're going to go up against the Young Bucks, obviously the champions. That was following a 6-man or trios match where the Elite had come out afterward and attacked them and all. So not anticipating that the tag titles change hands. I can't imagine the purpose would be for that. But then again, Tony Khan loves him some double champions. Look at Dustin Rhodes holding both sets of titles on the ROH side of things. And the way that all of the trios doubled up kind of champions things has been. That's good. Like, the running gag this year has been, if you're the trios champion, you're just going to get another belt other than that. But then again, look at what's happening on the card. It's like the Blackpool Combat Club side of that fighting for the tag titles, Pac fighting for the international title. And I'll lump these two in together just as like a quick thing for that. I fully expect the Young Bucks to retain over Claudio and Wheeler. And I also fully expect Will Ospreay to retain the international title over Pac. That match should be pretty damn good though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, both of those results I agree with. I think both matches should be pretty good. It's good. I think Claudio and Wheeler have some good chemistry with each other, and
that's 4 solid people in the ring. Like, they shouldn't have a bad match, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a bit different. It's nice to see Matt and Nick Jackson against a team that they're less familiar with facing. So yeah, I think they'll put some good stuff together. Also, we've seen what they could do together when it was the Elite feuding with Blackpool Combat Club last year. So we have seen signs of it. So I'm sure they'll put something good together here. Wheeler will obviously take the pin because that's what he's there for. But yeah, and Will Ospreay versus Pac is going to be, I imagine, a pretty spectacular match. And yeah, Will Ospreay will retain. But yeah, I think that they're going to handle this pretty damn well. I could definitely see this. Well, there's a lot of matches I could potentially see opening the show, but this feels like a good way of getting like a super hot start to the show is doing Ospreay versus Pac.
Yeah, I could see that being. It kind of depends, I guess, more so than anything, what else they add to the show, because we're at 8 matches right now.
I assume this is going to be the main card of the show. I don't think they're going to. I think anything they'll add will probably be on the 0 hour now.
Yeah, they got to add at least one match. They usually end up adding like 2 or 3.
I mean, Jericho doesn't have a match yet, so.
Jericho doesn't have a match. We don't have anything with the Patriarchy. We don't have that FTW title match for Roderick Strong and Hook.
Yeah,
set up for that. But then again, they could be setting that up for an episode of Dynamite or something.
Yeah, they haven't done, obviously. Guaranteed. Yeah, like Hayter and Saraya could have a match. Like there's definitely more stuff they could add to it, but it's a case of what stuff do they want to keep for this one, and then you've got Wrestle Dream next month to think of as well. So it's like, they're going to hold certain things back.
Yeah, they gotta not make this a 20 match card and then have nothing for the next couple episodes.
Exactly. I don't think anyone would be complaining. It's like if they decide, okay, we're just going to have 8 matches on the main card and then 3 or 4 matches on 0 hour that if you want to watch you can, but you can skip if you want to. So it's like that. I think that I'd be pretty comfortable with that after All In.
And we've got bouncing around back to the Dynamite stuff. Bryan Danielson had some segments in here leading up to just kind of build into the Jack Perry thing. Oh, something else I forgot to mention about the Jon Moxley thing. He put over Jack Perry in the process of that episode, saying, I don't care what, I forget exactly what he said, but he said something along the lines of, I don't care what everybody else says, you're a good kid.
Yeah, he said, you're a sweet kid. I think you're a sweet kid. Yeah. And I don't know, like there's 1 or 2 angles you can take from this, which is, first of all, like that he's clearly turning heel. Yeah. And that's a means of doing that. And that's a means of helping lay into that. And the fact like Moxley not coming out to Wild Thing, coming out to his New Japan theme and aligning with Marine Shafir and just beating people up backstage and targeting Darby Allin, it feels like, okay, this is a very heel, more laser focused Jon Moxley. So, and it is interesting that also him saying that when he's feuding with, Perry is right now feuding with the Blackpool Combat Club. So it feels like his allegiance to that group has broken, or at least is at breaking point. But or the more smarky way you could look at it is that was a shot at CM Punk.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
Because Moxley hates CM Punk.
Is there a reason for that in particular?
Those sort of like promos that he cut in the build up to the like both during and like leading up to that their matches they had in late 2022, like that was there are a lot of elements of truth into what he says about that stuff about the fragile body, fragile mind thing. I don't know where that extends back to. I think that's just just Moxley. I don't say being territorial, but it's a case of like Punk coming in and like causing issues, and Moxley just wants to not just have AEW his own, but he wants just AEW to just be a cool place to people to wrestle, at least from everything that he's kind of said in the past. So, I think there was just a bit of like competition between 2 of the like alpha names in AEW at that point in time. And it's just extended into, oh yeah, he did all that stuff and I think he's a bit of a prick. So now it's just moved into where it is now. But as I say, I don't have a direct line to either Jon Moxley or CM Punk, so I wouldn't be able to say. But it feels fairly evident that they don't like each other, or at least that Moxley doesn't like Punk. So and Punk barely likes anybody, so I presume that's the case.
Yeah, a lot of people jumping into which I thought was kind of funny. People are like, "Oh, he's recruiting him to his next stable," and it's like, I don't think that they're going to switch him over and leave the Elite guys. So, like, I think that that's maybe in the future they might team up in some capacity, but that would be very shocking to me if they took him out of the Elite to go with this new stable.
I'm considering the stable right now is Moxley and Marina Shafir. It doesn't feel like Perry fits that mold.
Yeah.
But yeah, but now that leads into the actual title match, and obviously Bryan Danielson's not losing the world title to Jack Perry. This is the one that you bet house on.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way. If that ended up happening and they gave the world title to the current TNT champion and it's Jack Perry right after Danielson had won that, and they set that all up, and you've got Grand Slam with Darby Allin, and you've got the Wrestle Dream stuff in Washington, there are way too many things that just point at just being like, come on, that's not happening.
But I will say that even though it is obvious, very, very obvious who the winner of this match is going to be, first of all, I think the match is going to be very good because it's got Bryan Danielson in it, and Jack Perry's never missed on pay-per-view. And then, or pretty much in general.
Yeah, TV too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack Perry's one of their like perennial trustworthy in-ring guys.
Yeah. And also this helps establish Jack Perry as a world title challenger, which is important because I think that he is somebody that they'll look to slot into that position when people like Bryan Danielson do go. They'll need people to like move up the ranks in towards that like upper mid-card main event level, and I think it's pretty obvious considering how long he's been there and how his journey's kind of gone that Jack Perry will be there at some stage. So he needs matches like this to help build up that experience. So yeah. And I think that also this match, considering the fact that it's almost certainly not going to be the main event, well, it definitely now won't be the main event.
Now they've established another match as being way more important than the one.
That this one there's likely to be more shenanigans in this match in terms of Blackpool Combat Club getting involved, the Elite getting involved, because like they cut promos on Dynamite by saying that they will do everything in their power to make sure the world title comes back to where it belongs, which is to the Elite. And so I imagine the Bucks will try and get involved in this one, and Okada maybe. And so yeah. So I imagine it's still going to be a very good wrestling match, but I imagine it's going to be not spoiled, but like affected by outside shenanigans. But Danielson not retaining.
Yeah. And that's something that, I mean, if anything changes, the card is always subject to change. There is never 100% a guarantee that things go in the direction that it's obvious, but that would be super shocking if that didn't play out that way. But they had a couple other things too that go along with that. I'm going to save the main event stuff. Some other things that they didn't really talk too much about as far as like the remaining matches that are on the card. Like, they didn't really establish a whole lot with the Willow Nightingale and Kris Statlander Chicago street fight for the CMLL World Women's Championship on this particular Dynamite, but we know that that's happening, and we're running down this full card as we are. So I don't know if they're going to give that belt to Statlander, but to me, it feels like you would probably just keep it on Willow.
Well, it's not a title match.
It's not a title match?
No, it's just a Chicago street fight.
I thought that the CMLL title was on the line.
It was originally on the line, but CMLL informed AEW that they do not want this match to be a title match.
Huh. So when did that happen?
In the last week. But
obviously
they have not announced that the change. They just changed the graphic to say that the title's not going to be on the line. There is a rationale for that. Obviously, I don't know the direct communications, but I know that Willow Nightingale is defending the CMLL title against Zeuxis, the woman that wrestled Mercedes Moné a couple of months back on Dynamite, in CMLL in like a month or so, maybe even less than that. But so I presume that's where I assume they want Willow to drop the title to one of their wrestlers instead, which gives me the assumption that they were planning to have Kris Statlander win the title here.
I mean, now I'm kind of curious about that because I was just assuming Willow was going to retain. And that was about it. But if there's like some kind of an issue with that, then that's kind of interesting.
Well, I say the title is definitely not on the line now. So my presumption is they wanted Kris Statlander to win the title, but CMLL said, well, we don't want Kris Statlander to be our champion because just no matter like if she's a good wrestler or not, Willow Nightingale has ruled quite a few times now in Mexico for CMLL, so she has a connection with the audience there, and the audience knows who she is, so she has more drawing power than Kris Statlander would have.
Mm-hmm.
So they've decided, okay. So to me, that gives the indication that Kris Statlander's going to win this match.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's weird that would even be pitched unless they were okay with it. In my mind, like if Tony Khan was like, well, how about we have this person win your championship? Like that kind of sounds strange, but I mean, we don't do the fantasy league for that side of things, so my prediction ultimately doesn't really matter, but I think I'll stick with Willow winning this, whether the title's on the line or not, just because that's still like potentially the end of the feud, and when push comes to shove, I think that she should ultimately just beat Statlander. So maybe not now, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just going based on that to think that Statlander is going to win, but Willow could still win. They just decided that they just don't want it to be a title match, because especially like if you have the title match, like there's always the risk of like if Willow goes down injured and Kris Statlander has to win for whatever reason, then you don't even want to risk it in that regard.
True. So it's happened with the strong title and all. So
yeah, exactly. So in this case, it absolutely guarantees that whoever wins, like, there's no risk of the title ending up on the wrong person. So yeah, as I'm looking forward to the match, though. I think that they've proven in several matches that when it comes to them wrestling in street fights, they'll put their bodies on the line. They'll use weapons. They'll toss it through tables and barricades and what have you. So yeah. And also, they're good friends outside the ring, and we always know that like good friends outside the ring are the ones that beat the shit out of each other the most in the ring. So
sometimes it works out really great like that. Sometimes it's a little problematic. Look at Jimmy and Jay. Yeah, it's not a guarantee, but
no,
it's more often than not the case.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this match.
Yeah. The other match before getting into the main event to talk about is the Daniel Garcia versus MJF singles match, which they started off the episode of Dynamite, cutting a little promo to kind of hype that up a little bit more, which that's a regular thing. MJF starting off these shows. Seems like they're just going to keep doing that going forward, but didn't really do anything for me. I was already interested in it. This didn't really change it up. It was just, some more digs at them and some more brawling and all. But I think I'm leaning more towards MJF winning this.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting situation. I thought that they did a very good promo segment at the start of the show, and MJF like kissing the blood off Daniel Garcia's head after breaking a bottle over his head. I thought that, I think it's just like it's classic pro wrestling like segment to build up more heat for the match. I thought you have this weird situation where MJF has just lost to Will Ospreay, so you don't necessarily want to have him lose on pay-per-view twice in a row. But then again, the one person that probably can do that and get away with that is MJF. So, and Daniel Garcia, it's a case of, well, again, we don't know what the situation is still. We don't know if he is with AEW long term. The hope is that he is, because they're doing this match. But it could be, either this feud could be a way to like, write him off into the sunset by having MJF eliminate him for good. But it feels like you should give Garcia a big win, even if it's like, I would say fluky, but a bit less like more of a roll up or a jackknife pin or something like that, rather than like him just straight up beating MJF. I think that that feels to me like the better approach to do it, to extend the feud and to help build up the next star. Because at the end of the day, if MJF wins and if Daniel Garcia is going, then obviously MJF has to win, and MJF has to win the feud. But if Garcia is sticking around, then you should be utilizing MJF to build him up to the next level, whatever that level ends up being. But yeah, so I think that this is probably one of, if not the hardest one, to decide who wins this one, because I feel like they're both.
There's a rationality for both of them potentially winning. Kind of a lot of it depends on stuff that we don't know the information for, like Garcia's contract.
And also what the long-term plan for this feud is, because I imagine that this isn't going to be a one and done, even if Garcia is leaving soon. I don't think they'll just have this match and that's going to be it. So yeah, I'm leaning towards Garcia winning this first match.
And then we got our main event. Now, this was the main event of not only the segment for Dynamite, but this was also, setting up something that is assuredly going to be the main event of the pay-per-view itself, where earlier in the episode of Dynamite, they went back and they had a whole thing with Swerve Strickland talking about his childhood home and that he's made enough money now that he can buy that home, and, a sentimental story on that front to set up kind of a tit for tat. And we had seen Swerve Strickland attack Nick Wayne and, infiltrate his home. So how do you up the ante for that? Well, Hangman Adam Page burns down the childhood home. I thought that was great. And that is now upgrading the steel cage match. It is now an unsanctioned lights out steel cage match. There's no way that that's not the main event. And I'm down for it. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, the segment on Dynamite was just spectacular in terms of, you could have done more to build up Swerve, like, buying that childhood home, and maybe done that last week, and then you have Hangman come in the week after. But, there's reasons behind it, and they did reveal the Strickland thing on social media and stuff before Dynamite, but they played it on the show. They established why it was important to him, and then you had Hangman get there and said oh, you finally revealed a weakness to me, so I'm gonna take the step that you've done. Because the whole story with Swerve is that Swerve is the cold, calculated killer that will take any edge that he can to beat his opponent, and Hangman's supposed to be the righteous one, even though he's the heel in this alignment, the one that believes that he was wronged and that Swerve deserves to go to hell. And then Hangman decided to take the step towards where Swerve was, burning his house down. He's now lost the righteous edge to him, because he's now, at the very least, at Swerve's level. So Swerve reacted to it, and he's basically, the tweet that I just saw go out of him after Dynamite saying he's dead. It's okay, this is going to be, because it's crazy, because they've already, last year they had the most violent match, one of the most violent matches I've ever seen. So how do they up the ante with this one? And it's a case of, I don't know how you can up the ante. You've just got to tell a slightly different story. But I imagine there's going to be tons of blood. I think the reason you have to put it on last is literally, otherwise whoever has the actual main event will have to be, wading through the blood that's in the ring to do their stuff.
What do you do with the staple gun? You replace it with a nail gun, they'll fucking die.
Yeah.
You kind of can't just on paper upgrade things the way that you can in a comic book.
But then you just go with physical violence, because they are trapped inside a cage at this time. So they'll utilize the cage a lot more. Obviously, they'd utilize the cage more than if it wasn't a cage match. But it's but I mean that they'll have to do more stuff within the ring. They can't just go brawl in the crowd or anything along those lines, unless they start doing that and then they get into the cage and start doing things. But yeah, there's multiple ways you can go about it. I'm super pumped for this match. I think that this is AEW's feud of the year, and it was pretty much the feud of last year as well. So they've done a really, really great job adding even more animosity to it through the segments they've done. And yeah, I just want to watch them beat the shit out of each other. This is gonna be a lot of fun. In terms of a winner, again,
That's
it's difficult
tough.
because like they have, again, there's a rationale for both of them winning. There's a good rationale in terms of Paige winning because now it's a lights out match. And I mentioned about the win-loss record beforehand, but that means it doesn't count on the records if they did still exist. So if Paige wins, it feels like, okay, he's got his victory, but it didn't quote-unquote count. So you could do that, and then he still... I think that the best for the overall story narrative is for Swerve to win. Just because you need Paige to get even more desperate to beat Swerve, because that will now make it 4 matches that he's had with Swerve, and he's not won any of them.
And also, that's a way to offset Swerve losing that championship at the last pay-per-view.
Absolutely. And it also could be a gateway into Swerve getting the match at Wrestle Dream with Danielson, if that's the route they want to take with it. I'm now like more kind of on the lines of Danielson's career is not ending at Wrestle Dream.
I'm still leaning in that direction, but it's far from a guarantee.
I think it's just the way that he said, like, he's going to hold that title until he loses it, and then that'll be the end of his career. I just feel like, okay, that's giving you a lot of wiggle room now to play with if you want to. So we'll see on that front, one way or the other. But I feel like Paige shouldn't beat Strickland until it's for the title. That would just be me if it was me doing it. I'm not saying it'd be wrong if Paige does get the victory here, because you can do different things with it, and I'm sure they have looked at different scenarios. But if it was up to me, I'd have Swerve win this match, and that just drive Hangman even more insane about what does he have to do to finally beat Swerve, and then one day we end up seeing it. I think this is their equivalent to, we see loads of like brilliant blood feuds I say loads of, but we've seen plenty over the years of like, this to me is equivalent to, and again, not one that I'm like overtly familiar with, but one that I hear about and I've seen bits and pieces of, Tommy Dreamer and Raven.
Yeah, I can see that.
In that it is very much like these two absolutely despise each other, but I'd say the one difference that they should have with Raven and Tommy Dreamer is that they should never be friends or allies in the future. I feel like they've reached the point that they should never show respect or friendliness together, even if when they're miles away doing different things from each other in the next year or 2 years in the future. It's a case of like, yeah, if they're never ever going to team with each other is what I mean, or that they should, if they're ever in the same match, they should just make a beeline for each other every time. Be like, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens before they started teaming up together again.
Yeah, something where they can be on the same team in some kind of a thing, but they're not going to be allies, and it'll be kind of like, you stay the fuck out of my way, or like,
yeah, exactly.
Because that's the way you sell a blood feud when they are fully in blood feud territory at this point, like, quite literally. So it's not a matter of them needing to like shake hands at the end of this. Like, that would feel very odd.
Yeah. So right now I'm leaning towards Swerve Strickland getting the victory, but
same here.
As I say, I'm more just looking forward to the match because it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, at this moment, at 4:30 or so on Friday, before they announce any kind of changes potentially to the card, which, I mean, I don't think that any changes are going to happen to this match in particular, but right now I'm leaning towards Swerve Strickland winning this, but it's an unsanctioned match, so it doesn't need to go in any direction, especially because there's no titles on the line, no like number one contenders kind of situation or whatever. So it could go in another direction, and if it does, then I'm not going to be necessarily opposed to it, because it's not like that's if he wins, then that kills off Swerve's future or something. Like, that's more than capable situation for both guys to win, and this match is going to kick some serious ass. So I'm looking forward to that more than I think any other match on the card, and that shouldn't be too shocking considering it's a steel cage unsanctioned, I'm gonna murder you type of feud. But we'll be doing our rundown of the pay-per-view tomorrow night. I'll have the live coverage, of course, on smarkoutmomo.com and on the wrestling news for anybody who wants to just check out the full, results lineup of that. We'll have the post-show immediately following the episode, the pay-per-view. So, we'll talk about what happens and what we were right about, what we were wrong about, our review, and all different sorts of ways. And I think that kind of covers everything that we had on the lineup for tonight, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Tonight's SmackDown, maybe we'll get some interesting stuff we'll roll into the discussion for next week. Collision might change things up. Maybe just announce some more matches for the pre-show and all that. But yeah, keep in mind, of course, show your support all over the different marketplace stuff that I mentioned before. Also join that Discord server, chat it up, let us know what you think about all these things. Same thing with the live chat during the pay-per-view and all. And if you go to the link tree at amangotree.com, you'll find links to all sorts of different things from Smark Out Moment, Fanboys Anonymous, and my personal stuff at Tony Mango on most of those things. Check out the Letterboxd and, hit me up on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it might be. And also check out what Callum's up to.
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Obviously, we mentioned the Fantasy League earlier, so head on over to either www.fantasyleague.com or find it through Smark Out Moment to check out the current standings. But you can also head on over to Smark Out Moment to find the Fantasy League. Not Fantasy League, I just mentioned that. Power Rankings, that's it. That's the other thing. It's because it's the other way around. I usually do the Power Rankings and then Fantasy League.
Yeah, you get into the rhythm.
Yeah.
So, you can also check out the Fantasy League, by the way.
Yeah. And then of course there's the Fantasy League. But Power Rankings, you can check out how I rank the WWE superstars based on their weekly performances. That'll be going out on Saturday. So check that out over on on Smark Out Moments, just listed under the Power Rankings, where you also find the Fantasy League.
Yeah. And keep in mind, everybody, that is going to roll us into, of course, not only the pay-per-view tomorrow stuff and the Fantasy League stuff, but the next week is kind of, we've been trying to figure out plans for stuff going forward. And it seems like I got a little bit of a game plan going now, where we're going to do one of our annual traditions. We'll either do the AEW roster tier list or the WWE roster tier list. We'll break it up into two separate videos of the men's and women's divisions on both of those, like we've done before, because it's just simpler to do that than to do the entire AEW roster on one and then the entire WWE on another, or God forbid, the entire both, and make that like a 4-hour long thing or something. I mean, well, let's put it this way. The AEW women's roster should take us 15 minutes at most, but the setup for that will be over the course of the next 2 weeks. I will be also recording a Darkcast in the meantime, at least one more Darkcast for potentially October's release. Depends on how quickly we can get done some of the other things, because we have to do our main event for October 16th, potentially in advance. So I'm trying to figure that out for game plan stuff. And we are also going to be doing a fan ounce table, most likely, of the Bad Blood in Your House. It's another thing that's kind of on the back burner. Maybe things change, maybe they don't. I don't know, but that's kind of the game plan, at least going for the next few weeks. I think we got Bad Blood as the next pay-per-view, and Wrestle Dream following that. So plenty of podcasts coming your way. And if you want to show your support, you know how to do it on the free side or the monetary side. But that'll do us in for this. And we want to thank you. Oh, so
do we mention the Fantasy League?
Oh, that's true. Just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
WWEFantasyLeague.com.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening for this episode. Thank you for leaving your comments and everything else. And we will see you tomorrow night. Adios for now, though. This has been another Smark Out moment, and we're being counted out. Also, check out the Fantasy League.